Let me start by kind of following up a little bit from yesterday. Did a radio interview a little while ago with Bill Cunningham, WLW, and he said he started getting calls after the press conference, and he says some people said the state was going to be wide open on May 1, and some people said, oh, nothing's going to change on May 1. And he wanted to know, which was the truth, and I said, well, a little bit in between, I guess. So let me kind of maybe try to recap a little bit. But I thought the way I would do it today is we look towards where we're going. And by the way, we're not going to be here tomorrow, and we're not going to be here Sunday unless something comes up, Saturday or Sunday. We will be working on the plan and kind of how we explain the plan. And next week we'll be starting to, in different days, talk about how that plan is actually going to work. But I thought today it might be a little aspirational, what we hope this plan is going to be. But I think it's always good to get back to basics, get back to what the basic principles are and what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get Ohioans back to work. At the same time, we're trying to protect Ohioans. We do not think those are mutually inconsistent. We think that because what you have done, you've flattened this curve, you've stayed home, done all the things that we needed to do, we're now in a much better position. And now we're going to have to slowly do this, but now we're ready to move into the next phase. I think as we talk about businesses opening, and this is going to be sequential, it's going to be over a period of time, but as we talk about these businesses that are going to open, what are the goals? And the goals are kind of common sense and pretty easy to state. Protect employees and those businesses that are open to the public, that are retail, protect the customers, protect those who are coming in. So that's it. I mean, that's everything kind of flows from there. I think we're in a situation where also protecting people, protecting customers, and protecting workers is also good business. Because quite candidly, the market forces is equally important, and probably more so than any orders that state government or that I might put out or Dr. Acton might put out. What do I mean by that? Well, no company is going to be able to attract employees if they don't think it's safe for them to work there. Employees are going to have to think it's safe every day. And the same is true with customers. You're not going to go to a place as a consumer, a retail place, if you think that you're not safe there, if you think they're not following the distancing that we've talked about, or if they're packed in so much that you're be rubbing up against others. So a lot of this is just common sense, and it's good business, and it's taking what we have learned so far and taking those best practices and putting them into effect. So let's talk a little bit about what you might see if you would go into a retail business, or what you would see if you would go into a manufacturing company that would be opened after May 1st, or what we hope you would see in those essential businesses that are open now. Distancing. There's no substitute for distance. The 6 foot is the norm. Obviously, more distancing is always better. I would expect to see people working there wearing a mask. I think this is going to become very common, and we want it to be very common in public places. You go into a business. You're going to see barriers where barriers are appropriate. I told you about a friend of mine had a manufacturing company. He's put some barriers to protect people where that was necessary, where they couldn't achieve what they needed to achieve in protection another way. You're going to see surfaces sanitized, cleaned quite frequently. You may see employees probably wearing gloves. Ample opportunity for the employees, ample opportunity if it's retail and you have customers for them to wash their hands, to sanitize their hands. Staggered arrivals for employees would be something you might see. Staggered lunch, where not everybody is gathered together. Employees who can work from home will work from home. Those who can't won't, but those who could will continue to do that, or will do that. You're going to see checking of the employees when they come in, the temperature of employees, making sure the employee is not in fact sick. And if someone's sick, they obviously go home. Retail, but also in the wholesale operations, or where you aren't meeting the public. Again, space is the key. So in retail, you would expect to see a limit to the number of people allowed in a store, in a place of business. And again, that will vary by place to place. So these are all just some of the things that we would expect to see. John's going to talk a little bit more in a moment about where we're going, but we're encouraging each industry, each group of businessmen and women who have different companies, different type businesses, to come together, get the best practices. Very, very important. After May 1st, things will change some, but the essential reality of the fact that this virus will remain out there. And so our life has to be guided by that. And one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that every individual, and we'll be talking about this in the future, has as much information about their own condition and what risks there are as humanly possible. So it's one of the reasons we do this every day. It's one of the reasons that the media has covered this so extensively and so very, very well that people can calculate some of their own risk. Openness is important. Testing. We're going to see testing that's going to evolve, but where people are going to be able to determine over a period of time, it's not going to be done overnight, but whether or not they may have had this when they had no idea that they had it. As we move forward into this world, some things, as I said, do not change. One of them is that we have to assume that everyone we meet is carrying the virus, because many people are walking around among us and don't know they're carrying the virus. In the conference call I had this morning with a prison director, and this is anecdotal, but it kind of tells you something. We're doing some testing. We're doing a lot of testing in our prisons. There's one dorm, 152 people tested positive. We're doing extensive testing. Of that 152, I'm told 60 of them had no symptoms. 60 had no symptoms. Again, it's not scientific, not big enough numbers to come up with the fact that we can't say that 39% of the population, 39% of the people who have it don't have any symptoms. We can't say that. But it sort of tells you that why we have to assume that everyone that is out there is in fact positive, because many, many times they will not know that. In some cases, it would appear they will never really know that until they actually have a test. We have a chart I know that Dr. Acton is going to talk about, and Lieutenant Governor is going to talk about. If you could put that one
Remember this side.
up there.
I got it.
Okay, there we go. The path forward to restart. And it's really what we want to do. Public health measures and compliance is an essential part of that. We've got to protect the most vulnerable. We talked about that yesterday. And then business operating safely with safeguards. And that's pretty much what I have been talking about and giving some examples about that. But both of them will talk a little bit more about this. I am today granting 7 commutations to prisoners. I am denying 84. We get, to put this in some perspective, we get hundreds of requests coming directly out of prison, and many of them are from people who are in for some very, very, very serious offenses. So the 7 that we are granting, that number is going to be shared with the news media during this press conference. Let me conclude with, we had questions about how do we conform, or how do we look. You know, when we did this press conference, we did at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we had a conference with the president, and at 6 o'clock the president had his public conference and rolled out their plan. And let me just say, I think it's a good plan. The president did say, and I think he's right, that every state's going to be different. Every state is going to have to do this differently. We have set up a couple different groups of governors. We're in a group, kind of self-defined group with Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. Governor Holcomb, Governor Beshear, and I talk a lot. And so this is a group that we're kind of comparing notes, and our departments are comparing notes as we go forward. We are also in another group of mostly Great Lakes states, I guess with the exception of Kentucky, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, and Ohio. And again, we have a lot in common with those states. But as the president indicated, ultimately, every state has got to fashion a plan for the people of that state. And so as we reach out to people, and as we put the different groups together as we move forward, I can just assure you that Ohio's plan is going to be by Ohioans for Ohioans, because of the fact that we need to recognize the uniqueness of the state of Ohio. At the same time as we reach out to our friends in other states and try to get as much good information as we can and share what we hope are good ideas. So, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much, Governor. Good afternoon. I know that, as the governor has asked me to do, I have been spending a lot of time talking with business officials, businesses, big and small, health officials, every thoughtful person that we can bring in the time we have to talk about the restart and May 1 and some of the things that people can expect. There will be more specific details coming in the days ahead. As we discussed, this will come in phases. There will be business practices that everybody will be expected to implement. But let me just say that inclusiveness is very inefficient. When you're trying to get everybody involved who deserves to have a voice in this, you get a lot of information, and you got to figure out how to move that information into an actionable plan. And we have the Economic Advisory Group, which is reaching out and trying to be inclusive. We have health officials that Dr. Acton and many others are engaging in this conversation. We have businesses who are big, who have certain capacities and needs, and we have businesses that are small that we also need to hear from as it relates to making these decisions. We have sectors, manufacturing, retail, restaurants, all have unique situations that they need to confront, and there are unique health applications that need to be put in place to put them together. And then we always have in our great state the regional differences about what somebody in Cincinnati will think bordering two other states versus Toledo versus Cleveland. And you have all of these different kinds of issues that need to go into the mix to develop the strategy. And it will, and it's being developed, and it will be unveiled in greater specificity as we go through next week, because we know that we can't have a plan on May 1 that we wait until May 1 to deliver. We're going to make sure that people have this information in advance. We have, additionally, we want to make sure that when this occurs that it's clear to business what their role is, it's clear to employees what both their business, the business owner, and they are expected to do. We want that also for their customers. Want everybody to be able to understand it and feel confident in it. And the governor alluded to this chart a little earlier. And Dr. Acton and I actually had a really thoughtful conversation about this before we came in. You know, what it is, so we talk about restart, but these are the voices that we're really trying to make sure get to this point. Because that's the safe place that we want to go. That's the place that we can have confidence that everybody's input is included in this. And, you know, it's built out of fear. Because you talk to everybody, and I know that Dr. Acton and the health community feels a great sense of responsibility to make sure that this is done right, the public health measures and compliance. That's their job. And those are really important things for everyone to know. But we also know that businesses have a great deal of fear as well, that many of them are worried that they're going to go out of business. They're worried about how they're going to really survive this pandemic from an economic point of view. And we need to understand every one of those issues as well. And then obviously the vulnerable populations. I can tell you this, you don't have a governor who is more concerned about you. There's no one in the country that's more concerned about you than Mike DeWine. And we're trying to put this all together so that we get to that place that everybody can have confidence in, that voices are heard, that we get there, and that Ohioans can feel comfortable that when May 1 comes, that we're going to have the most thoughtful restart we can possibly have. I've heard this said a number of times in the conversations that we've been in over the last few days, is that coronavirus is going to be with us for a while, and we need to learn with it, or we need to live with it safely. Businesses, employees, and their customers, they need to know that there's a safe strategy. The public, the responsibilities that the young have to the old and vulnerable. All of these things, there are more strategies now. We know more about it than we did when this started. And so we can build confidence in knowledge and the resulting strategies that come with that knowledge. I will say, though, whether it's April the 17th, May the 1st, or June the 1st, government order or not, that coronavirus is just as dangerous as it's ever been. And what we believe that we have, though, now is the knowledge from public officials, the safe operating practice for business, the understanding as a society and a culture that we know how to protect the lives of the vulnerable and what everybody's responsibility is in this. And that's the goal. That's the goal where we'll end up being. And we do want to find that balance between lives and livelihoods. That's our mission. The governor has called a great team together to work on this, and we look forward to the opportunity to deliver this to the people of Ohio in the coming days.